here. As I tried to convey, we expected, maybe 40 or 50 of you. This actually is 3 times that, so very gratifying. We're all a part of this community, and I think this is a really great showing of interest and support and the love that we all share for this resort. So at this time, very excited to welcome Ken Cruse, the CEO of Alphawave Investors, the group that bought Salishan, closed on the property at the end of November, took over pretty much at that time. It took a month for Crescent Hotels to depart, and we're anxiously awaiting the arrival of a portfolio of hotels that will operate the resort. So there's so much planning, so much energy, and so much going on that we thought we'd better start sharing it with you now. And what better place to get it than from the horse's mouth rather than the other end of the animal. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ken Cruse.
Thank you, Steve. I actually think that Steve said, last week we were talking, I think Steve said that there would be somewhere between 6 and 8 people here. So I guess this shows you the power of free beer. Actually, not kidding, Steve's been in charge of our wine inventory here. And so one of the secondary goals of tonight is to work through the wine inventory that Steve identified as highly questionable. So you guys don't feel bad.
Thanks for the
Steve. I do want to say thank you to Steve for his help. We acquired this hotel back right at the beginning of December, end of November of this year. It was an REO auction, a real estate owned auction. That means this property was owned by a bank. It was technically owned for the better part of 4 or 5 years. Technically owned for 3.5 or 4 years, but it was in pre-receivership for a lot longer than that. And as you all know, as members of the community, this place has suffered considerably under that ownership period, and didn't do a whole lot better under the prior ownership or the owner before that. It's really, you have to look all the way back to when John Gray owned this, and before the time he sold it in 1995, before you had a real healthy, vibrant operation. What we're going to talk to you about today is a little bit about our plans to take it back to those roots and really refocus on the community, you, the Salishan homeowners in particular, but recalibrate the product that we've got here so that it appeals to the modern traveler as well as respects and honors the past of this resort. Before I get going too quickly, I did want to say thank you again to Steve for everything that you've done and continue to do to help with us. We also have in the back in the light blue sweater, Herbert Spiegel, who is the interim GM for the property from Portfolio Hotels. Herbert's got a very, very long list of accomplishments in the hotel industry, and we're very fortunate to have him here. He's only on loan from Portfolio. We are in the process of actively seeking out a permanent general manager for the resort, and we've got a couple of folks that are very close to the finish line, so hopefully more to come on that front. I'd also like to point out Bill Trimper, who's my colleague. He's our Chief Operating Officer at Alphawave Lodging. Bill as well comes from a great background in the hotel industry, and he's been instrumental in helping us formulate our plan for Salishan. As I touched on as I began my comments, Salishan's languished for the last several decades under lax ownership, incompetent leadership, changes in the leadership roles, a lack of a vision, and so on and so forth. And as a result, and understandably, the relationship with you, the community of Salishan itself, you've become disenfranchised. And our understanding is you've found other places to go and enjoy yourselves and have a great dinner and recreate and so on and so forth. A key component of our goal here is to bring you back. We recognize that the success here at Salishan will largely hinge on your involvement and your support. And the reason we're talking to you now, and you're really the first group that we're talking to in a more formal setting like this, is because we want to get your feedback and your input before we completely crystallize our business plan for this place, so that we have all the, we can do everything, but that we have most of the areas that you're concerned about addressed in our plan. So we'll get more to that as we go on. But before I get into that, I'll spend a moment about Alphawave and my own background. We formed this company. It's a real estate investment company a little over 3 years ago at this point. Prior to that, I was Chief Executive Officer of Sunstone Hotel Investors, which when I left was about a $5 billion real estate investment trust. very focused on the hotel industry. I was there and in a leadership role in a very fortunate time. I was also fortunate to have built a wonderful team there. We executed on a pretty ambitious business plan from 2011 through 2017 when I left, 2015, I apologize, when I left, that resulted in us adding about $1 billion, $1.5 billion of new high-quality hotels. We sold a bunch of lower-quality hotels. We deleveraged our balance sheet more than any of our lodging industry peers. And we were consistently ranked one of the top workplaces in Southern California. And we did all that while generating about a 38% annual return for our investors, which was nearly 10 points higher than that of our industry peers. So very proud of that. Again, it was more a product of being part of a great team than anything that I particularly did. I was in the right place at the right time, but it's a good starting spot for us to have formed Alpha Wave Investors. My company now, Alpha Wave Investors, is a private company versus Sunstone, which is a publicly traded company. As a private company, we can maneuver a little bit more quickly in some cases, although access to capital is done in a different way. As a result, we focus on slightly smaller deals. We've done about 16 transactions so far in our short existence. This is one of our more exciting ones. It was as I said, it was a real estate auction. So prior ownership, the bank decided it's time to put this thing up on the auction block. The process was, as many of you know, I think some people in the room actually participated in the auction. The process was highly restricted, a very quick process. The documents were non-negotiable, and if you won the auction, you had to put up non-refundable money day one, which was great for us. Those are the kinds of deals that we actually like, believe it or not, because it keeps a lot of the competitive institutional buyers out of the mix. And so we were able to come in and take the asset down at a price point that by any measure was very attractive. Now it can still work out to be a very bad deal if we don't do the right things next after we buy it. But fundamental to any real estate investing is buying a great asset at a great price. And then your opportunity to screw things up is a little bit less. And so we've certainly started out in a good spot here with this property. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about our plan for Salishan coming forward. And in particular, I want to talk to you about some of the open aspects of the plan that we could use your feedback on. I also want to establish an open and ongoing dialogue with everybody in this room. We'll get out to you my cell phone number, my email information, Bill's contact information, certainly Herbert's contact information. I say certainly because you should contact Herbert first. I'm kidding. If there's anything at all, any ideas, any complaints, any comments, anything you want to share with me, any observations from years past that may be continuing to perpetuate here in the operations here, we'd like to know about that. We want to get your feedback because we want to fix things while we have an opportunity to. Our goal here is to euphemistically reopen the doors in this property next season. We're talking May, June timeframe, and produce a vastly different guest experience than what folks would have experienced last year. And so I'll spend a little bit of time today on what that actually entails within our plan. But again, we want to leave this conversation as a two-way dialogue, and we want to walk away with a lot of notes. I think Bill's volunteered to describe the event. So to the extent that there are questions that we can't address or that we're going to add to our list of to-dos, please do bring those up, and I promise you we will follow up on them. Again, I don't necessarily, I can't promise that we can do everything that may be suggested, but at least we'll try to. All right, so welcome to the new Salishan. Make sure I can wake up the computer. Any questions? Thank you for coming. How's the wine inventory?
Don't blame the IT guy.
we were snowmobiling recently, and a guy went off the road, completely off the road, and he got out, and the guy that we were with said, he walks up to the guy and goes, "Man, this road is so difficult to get on." He's like, "You don't blame the road when you've had 5 cocktails." I promise you I've not had any cocktails, so it's not a cocktail. All right, so we're going to spend a moment on the vision. Before we get to the vision, though, we do want to talk a little bit about the history of the resort. As you all know, Salishan Salishan was built in 1965. I've learned so much about John Gray. I, like all of you, have known Salishan for many, many years. My parents used to live out here in Corvallis, Oregon, actually. We come to the coast all the time. We drive by Salishan and point out that's where all the rich people go. And I always remember driving by here, and then you drive by Siletz Bay. And it's just such a beautiful portion of the coast and a remarkable, very, very special place. And so, you know, you look back at the history and what the initial vision of this great resort was, and you can't help but be saddened by what has happened and what has befallen this resort over the last 20 years. Again, a lot of our plan is to honor the past, to be highly respectful of the vision that John Gray had and John Storrs had when they built this place, and really draw back to the roots of the resort, which was to be a nature-facing social venue in a resort that really celebrates the beauty of the profound beauty of the Oregon coast. So our vision is to basically provide a modern interpretation of that original view. We're essentially going to create Salishan into the benchmark of hospitality in the Pacific Northwest, both in terms of guest service, but also wellness and also recreation opportunities. That sounds lofty, but if you look at what we have here, and it's interesting in talking to people who are in the community, many people have kind of lost sight of the fact that this is just such a special place with so many great innate qualities. That achieving this vision, we always try to put big visions for any asset that we're acquiring that are specific and attainable. This sounds awfully lofty. It's actually, I don't think it's lofty at all. I think when we're done here, especially with all of your help, we're going to have a resort that is unquestionably the benchmark of hospitality in the Pacific Northwest. We've got 4 pillars to our strategy at this point. First, and I would say foremost, exceptional service. One of the problems that Salishan has encountered over the last 2 decades is that prior ownership has tried to save their way to success. They've tried to find ways to cut back on operational expenses, streamline food and beverage, cut back on the quality of what's being provided to guests, and consequently, the guest experience here has been on a steady decline. In the modern day and age, in particular, whereas 20 years ago, 30 years ago, certainly 40 years ago, if a guest had a bad experience, typically that guest would explain that to their friend, a couple of other people, and the circle of influence that may have been involved in that guest's bad experience was fairly limited. I'm not even aware of guests having a bad experience here 20 or 40 years ago, but if they did, the guests didn't have the mouthpiece that modern consumers do have. And so if you look over the last few years, people have come here. The resort's actually done a pretty good job of marketing itself. You've seen a lot of what we call fan trips. Reporters and media writers come to the resort, experience what we have to offer here, and write pretty nice reports about it because, let's face it, it's a spectacular property. And if you know that there's a VIP coming through, they can roll out the red carpet and treat that individual very well. The flaw with that whole approach was, while the resort got great press, when people read that press and said, great, we got to come back to Salishan, people would come back to the resort and experience a much different level of service. And consequently, they go home and write about it, go on to TripAdvisor and talk about how awful their experience was at Salishan. And when you're coming to a place that's this legendary in its status and has so many great stories about how wonderful things have been, and when a reporter has just written a great article about how awesome it is, your expectations are here. Those expectations are missed by just a little bit. Unfortunately, the consequences to the resort were asymmetric. If we just met their expectations, people would have gone home and probably not said much about it. If you missed their expectations by a little bit, or certainly by a lot, people write really bad things about the resort, and they should. Consequently, on TripAdvisor, which is a great gauge for where a resort stands in the true consumer's conscience, Salishan ranks 3.5 stars out of 5. So on that level, you'd say if it's a lower Best Western, for example, I won't say Marriott. If it's a Best Western, for example, maybe that's okay. Although I know plenty of Best Westerns on the Oregon coast that have far greater ratings on TripAdvisor. But where that puts us, Salishan, on the overall ratings for assets on the Oregon coast, for resorts on the Oregon coast, is we're ranked 95th out of 226 hotels on the Oregon coast. 95th out of 226. So, again, I mentioned we look for special situations when we're acquiring properties. We do look for low TripAdvisor ratings as one of the indicators where we want to buy an asset, because that's something that's a great indicator of bad management, poor positioning of the asset, and something that should be readily fixable. Our view is that this resort should be somewhere in the top 5 of all resorts on the Oregon coast. We really think that the resort should be number 1 on the Oregon coast, and I do believe we'll get there. So, services. Service is critically important. I'll get to a couple of the details of our plan around service here shortly. The next point is introducing a broad range of eco-adventure activities. And so the resort for many years has relied on kind of a dual-pronged approach to recreation. We have golf and we have tennis. And those are both still important pieces of the puzzle here at Salishan. I want to get that out right away at the beginning of the conversation. I know that we've been remiss in getting that information out to folks. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware of this, but Doug Ride, who couldn't be here today, I had dinner with Doug and Gretchen last week, and they mentioned you got to get out there and talk to people because the rumor mill has started. And so our plan is we're going to refocus our efforts, redouble our efforts on golf this year, and try to find a way to make golf as successful as it traditionally has been. Golf today only does about 24 people per day, 6 rounds per day on average throughout the entire year. That's up to paying people. I know there are plenty of people who take their carts out and kind of skirt under that statistic, but of the paying people, we have 6 courses a day. Even, that's including the high season. So we recognize that golf is important, but we also recognize that we're not speaking to a very important and deep component of potential demand for the resort. You look at some of the other competitive resorts in the Pacific Northwest in particular, and we're actually broadening our scope to be beyond the Pacific Northwest to include California and Colorado and some of these other destination resorts that we think we're absolutely equipped to compete with. And these resorts have added any number of additional recreation features, whether it's challenge courses up in the trees, ropes courses, zip lines, all sorts of fun things like that. Part of our plan is, first of all, we're not going to add zip lines here because our concern is we don't want to shift the mindset as it relates to Salishan to that of an amusement park, right? We want this place to be pure, eco-facing, high-end, And that was, zip lines, to be completely open and honest with you, zip lines is one of the things that we talked about up front. Skamania, one of our competitive resorts, that was also developed by John Gray. They've incorporated the full spectrum of different courses, and they do have a zip line course there. And they charge people $68, $70 for 2 hours to get up on their little ropes course. People drive from Portland to go up there, and it's been a pretty profitable thing for them. We think we can do better than that. Frankly, I'll reference some of the statistics from Skamania, and you'll be surprised, and yet again you'll realize why we were compelled to pursue this asset, because it's unbelievable how far we underperform Skamania. They currently generate about 70% occupancy per year at about almost $180 average daily rate. Salishan last year did about a 44% occupancy rate. Even though if you look online, our weather is consistently better than it is up in Stevenson, Washington. So our occupancy was about 44. Our average daily rate was also about $146. So way below what Skamania has. And if any of you guys have seen the place, and I hate to call out a specific resort, but that's what we do in this business, we benchmark. Salishan is vastly superior in every respect to that resort. So that's it's just an exciting fact to us to say, we know what they're generating over there. They're generating almost $31,000 of EBITDA per key versus last year, and EBITDA is basically cash flow. Last year, Salishan generated $3,000. 10 times more cash flow at the sister resort up there in Washington, we know we can beat that number. So pretty exciting data point that's already out in the market. And I'm not meaning to imply that that's all attributable to the additional recreation that they've provided. It's much more complicated than that. But certainly the added recreation features that they have there, of which we're going to be doing a number, are a piece of are a component of the added demand for that resort. So eco-adventure activities are critically important. Oh, thanks. The next piece of the puzzle is instilling wellness as a core value for the resort. So wellness isn't really, maybe a few years ago was a buzzword. Wellness is, I think, critically important to many of the travelers who would be or do come to Salishan. Wellness isn't working out at the gym. Many of you already are aware of the concept of wellness. Wellness entails healthy eating habits, healthy sleeping habits, mental relaxation techniques, and so on and so forth. It's an outgrowth of the whole spa experience, and as you all know, Salishan has a phenomenal spa. We're going to take that spa and broaden out the spa-like services and some of the concepts of wellness and apply those to the entire resort, so that when you check in, if you want to be on a wellness track, and we'll be doing package deals and so on that are oriented around wellness, you can come here and you can spend a weekend and feel like you're a new person when you leave the resort by pursuing some of these wellness tracks on the food and beverage side, on the exercise side, on the mental relaxation side. Sleep is a big part of wellness and so on. So you can do that. You can also, you'll still be able to come to Salishan and feel like a new person at the end of the weekend because you had a lot to drink and a lot to eat over the weekend. You might not feel like a better person, you feel like a different person. And then to that point, you know, the last pillar, I said we have 4 pillars of our repositioning plan. To that point, the last pillar is creating a social culinary environment. So as you guys know, the resort's gone through several iterations and failed attempts at reconstituting the food and beverage program here. In my experience, what really succeeds in food and beverage is if you create an environment where people want to hang out, whether you're a single traveler or travel with the whole family or travel with a group of 50 people, you create venues that are conducive to those social interactions. Now you have to have great food and a great menu to support that, but it also comes down to the decor, the service level, again, critically important, the access, the price point, how it's marketed, and so on and so forth. So we're working through all those aspects of the food and beverage operation, and we'll be sharing more and more information as we have renderings and plans and so on for what we'll be doing in those areas, but key component of our whole plan. Just spend a couple more minutes on service and some of the tactics now that we're going to employ in each of these 4 different areas. First of all, we came up with those 4 different areas by taking a big step back and saying, okay, what can Salishan be truly great at, right? We know a lot of people spend their whole careers trying to be good at things that they're bad at instead of trying to be great at the things that they're good at. In real estate, people make the same mistake. They try to be good at things that they're bad at, and they don't have the innate qualities and capabilities to be ever great at, but they'll spend a lot of time and resources trying to be good at those things. Our focus has been on, let's figure out where we can be truly great. So we took a step back and locked ourselves in a room and talked about where can Salishan be world class and where can it be known for. And we distilled it down to those 4 different areas. Unquestionably, the 158-acre parcel on which this resort resides is profound in its beauty. The fact that we're isolated from Lincoln City and Newport and some of the other more garish aspects of the Oregon coast is a great thing. It's unfortunate, right, how it's grown, but I'll try to find a nice word. Salishan is so different, and we're buffered from all that because we've got Silet's Bay here, we've got plenty of natural space between us and the next tourist trap. That's a wonderful thing, and we're going to emphasize that. So, the natural beauty of this place and capitalizing on that through eco-facing activities. The wellness program will be out there, the recreation activities and so on. They'll all be facing that natural resource that we're so lucky to have here. That does mean that we're going to do some of these activities that are peripheral to golf or in the woods that are adjacent to golf. That does likely mean that we'll be taking the signs out that say golfers only and say something like, please be respectful of the golfers and please walk and ride your bikes at your own risk. Yes. And we're going to look at aspects of the golf program too that are more green. That's another piece of the puzzle here, pun intended, that we want to make this whole resort more green. One of the strengths of portfolio hotels, and you couldn't be here today, you'll all probably meet him at some point, Helmut Horn, the chairman, was one of the forerunners in the whole green movement in the United States. And the first time he came out here, he said, we're not going to ever have plastic here on the resort. We're going to do zero waste program. Exactly. We're going to find ways to do golf better. You know, today we use over 1,500 kilograms of pesticide on the golf course every year, untold fossil fuels and fertilizers and you name it. So there's a way to do the golf better, but there's also a way to create multiple uses of that real estate, so it's not just for golf. So more details on that to come. I touched on, we're talking about where we can be world class. Service is another area where we're unquestionably not world class today, but we absolutely know that Salishan can be world class in this regard. One of the areas that we're going to address service here is through employee housing and employee services. So when the casino opened up a few years ago, or many years ago at this point, they started paying people about $5 more per hour than what they were getting here. They also started giving people daycare and other fringe benefits that weren't at the time offered here at Salishan. We're revisiting all of that. We want to pay people more than what they can get in the market. We want to provide people the services that they need so that if you are a young mother or a parent of children, that we're providing those services. We think we can get a lot of great, dedicated, loyal folks to come into the resort as a result. And we're also going to, labor on the coast, as you all know, is just a super, super big challenge. But we've all talked about this. There's not a resort in the United States that doesn't have the same issue. Any place you go to a resort that's at least in part nature-based is typically in a location that has real challenges on the labor front. So it's incumbent on us to find ways to fix it. Another way where we're looking to fix it, and we will be fixing it because we have three different alternatives in this area, is on the employee housing front. So people can't afford to live here. Even if we give people big raises and provide the daycare that they're looking for, it's still a very expensive place to live, the Oregon coast. And so we've got the benefit here of having a couple different areas where we can build in some additional employee housing on property. We're working through the permitting process on that right now. If we can't get that through permitting in time for this season, there are one or two other buildings in the market that we're looking to potentially acquire to serve as employee housing. And if that's plan B, if plan B also falls through, we'll carve off a little bit of our inventory and use that for employee housing for this first year until we get the permanent solution in place. So employee housing is no longer going to be a constraint in us getting a top quality, stable, well-trained employee base here in the property.
Is the number one place that you're looking the marketplace to build employee housing?
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple different areas within the marketplace that we think we might be able to carve out some employee housing. Right now, there's a two-story portion that's empty in the basement that the top story is used for kind of small breakout meetings. We can get 7 units there, and a lot of times the employee housing is double, or even in Colorado Springs, we're doing quadruple occupancy, I think it is. So we can fit a lot of people in there if they're looking for a warm roof over their head. We're trying to find a little bit more permanent solution as well. But the marketplace is certainly one area that we're looking. Once we provide the housing and the amenities that are required and the benefits that are required to get a good quality employee base here, I should point out too, we're also looking at a J1 program, or we're not looking at, we're using a J1 program, which is guest workers. So we can bring workers in from offshore locations in areas unlike here that have high unemployment rates, but super talented, willing, eager employees. Places like the Philippines, certain places in Africa, Russia, etc. We can get those kinds of folks in here, provide them housing. They can provide services like housekeeping, etc. And they'll do it in a very effective way. So we're looking into that as well. For all the employees in the resort, we're going through a 4-pronged program on service. So, and Herbert and team and Steve et al. Are going to be tasked with really celebrating when employees exhibit these 4 steps of service. The first step is that every single employee, no matter what department they're in within the resort, will be empowered to identify areas where a problem may occur with a guest before the problem occurs. No matter what department they're in, they're going to have the ability to go out there and solve those problems. And they'll be observed, and if they're observed or caught in the act, so to speak, they'll get a reward and public recognition at the employee meeting that week. And we're going to create a culture where it's celebrated when people think like an owner and think like somebody who's potentially going to be staying here. Where's somebody going to stub their toe? You know, the toilet in the public restroom didn't flush properly, and address it. Don't just walk away. So there's that proactive piece, which is so critically important right now. That will be one of the pillars of our full service training program. The second piece of it is every employee will be empowered to solve guest issues when they occur. So again, maybe somebody got a cold room service order and you happen to be in the engineering department and you observe this. Your obligation as an employee is to find a way to fix that and go above and beyond so that from a transactional perspective, the guest feels like not only did they not have a problem, but they were treated more fairly than, they were treated better than they deserved to be as a result of that problem occurring. So everybody will be trained to take those kinds of steps here on the property. The third piece of it will be to actively solicit feedback from everybody who's on property. So if you all are here for dinner and you're walking out and you happen to see somebody on property, they're going to be trained to look you in the eyes and ask you how's your day going? How's your stay here on the property? Is there anything that we can do better? And draw out that, solicit those kinds of responses from guests. A lot of times you don't want to hear it because it's usually people are going to talk when they have something to complain about or they've got an opportunity for improvement. We're going to reward people for asking those questions and addressing those issues. They're going to get real money for it. They're going to get obviously visual recognition by the team. And then the fourth piece of it is, and certainly that third piece applies to the front desk. When people are checking out, we need to have a culture here where we're asking proactively, how was your stay? Did anything go wrong? Is there anything at all I can do that can make that could have made your stay better, short of comping the entire thing? And it's just those little touches that somewhere along the line, I'm sure back in 1965, 1970, 1975, those kinds of things were happening here. Those aren't new concepts, that's common sense stuff, but somewhere along the line they stopped happening. And it's not because we have bad people working here on property. We have wonderful people here working on property. They've just been, unfortunately, suffering from a lack of leadership, a lack of direction, a lack of vision that they can all get behind and pull. And so it's not there, and they've been super short-staffed. So we've got a great team in place now, and we're going to give them the tools to be even better here in the very near future. The last piece of our service puzzle is oh, yes?
On the golf side, you're looking for golf.
So we're looking at 3 different areas on golf. There's 2 different groups that are professional management companies that are looking to come in. They're providing proposals. One is Kemper. They run Bandon Dunes. So they propose to come in and help us right the ship on golf. One of the reasons that golf has not done well over the last few years is it just hasn't been marketed. It hasn't been part of the sales program with the resort. We haven't gone out there and set up the tournaments. We haven't done anything that should have been done to draw people onto the course. So this year is the year where we again redouble those efforts to ensure that people are there. Touchstone is the other group that's bidding for management of golf, and then we do have a few different individuals that have surfaced that are potentially good golf pros for us. So we're going to get, one way or the other, we're going to have good leadership on the golf course. And by the way, I want this to be interactive, so if you have any questions as I'm speaking, please do chime right in, and I'll plow through this here pretty quick. Right now it's getting late, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Just last point on service is that one other thing that hasn't happened, and I started with this concept, so I'll end with it on the service side, is that when guests write on TripAdvisor or Yelp or any of these other online services, again, their mouthpiece is so loud in this current world. We have to address that. And so what I've told the team here is, like, if somebody writes something bad about the resort on TripAdvisor, we've already failed. We've missed those first 3 steps somehow. We need to go back and figure out what we need to fix. But if they do write something bad on TripAdvisor, we need to get on TripAdvisor and say, profusely, I'm sorry about this, and figure out ways that we can fix it, invite that guest back, whatever it takes. But we need to be, if they're going to go online and talk about their negative experience on the resort, it's incumbent on the resort to get online and say, that was a screw up, we own that, and we're going to fix it. So that's the whole service piece, and we do think it's straightforward and simple, but we'll, yes?
On the subject of the golf-only signs, those went up several years ago because one season, over a 3-month period of time, we had 4 people hit. One of them really serious.
Yeah.
And so consequently, the signs went up, and since they've been up, we have not had people hit.
Yep.
So just be aware that when you put joggers out there or whatever, they think they have as much right to be there as a golfer. And unfortunately, the skill level of the golfers here. For myself.
One more thing, and we definitely, we need to be careful about this, but our view is we need to innovate a little bit here. We need to figure out, how far we can go with certain of these things, but you're absolutely right. We can go too far in the wrong direction here by trying to open that up to other folks.
Hey Ken, I just want to make sure I'm writing a note. We need to get golf classes.
Golf classes.
Golf classes.
Free golf lessons. Helmets and face guards. Okay, real quickly on the wellness front. Again, this relates to creating a destination that the right demographic is compelled to come visit. And so when we make wellness a bigger component of the overall resort experience here, we think we're able then to draw high-end travelers from Phoenix, from Denver, from Los Angeles, from Orange County. You name it. There's a lot of major feeder markets that we've not concentrated on over the last several years. In part because Portland is and always will be the mainstay of demand for this resort. But it also because we didn't have anything that was compelling enough to get somebody on an airplane to fly out here and then travel from PDX here for another 2.5 hours. We just didn't have that. We didn't have the story, and that's what we've developed now. And wellness is going to be a big component of that. Access, which is not on our list here, is another big piece of it. We have a great little airport here. We have a function lawn that you can land a helicopter on, and we have a product here that is unquestionably compelling to those folks who would be happy to shell out a couple of extra $100 to fly privately into the resort and have door-to-door service. And so we're shifting our focus on who we're marketing to that type of person. Yes.
I'll tell you actually, I've been here since '82. I live right on the corner of Salishan and East Bay Point Road.
Yep.
5 things I've noticed. Number 1 in your presentation. First, you've mentioned world class, you've mentioned locality. Where do they meet? We have emerging environment, but yet we're looking for people outside the area zone. Number 2, I've heard nothing about security in your presentation. How do we address there are challenges we have. This is not 1970 anymore. Number 3, I've heard you mention nothing about the internet or technology. Unless we're communicating as a group and as a neighborhood, we're not going to be doing much together. And finally, what is your stake in all of this? What do you expect to have?
Sure. All right, well, 4 questions, so let's see if I can get all of those down. The first question was about locality versus being world-class. And so, look, I think those are highly compatible concepts. We are a world-class resort. As I said before, somewhere along the lines, many of the folks who work here, and certainly prior ownership, lost sight of the fact that this is such a world-class asset. Not just because of the physical beauty of where it sits and how unique that is on the entire Oregon coast, but also because of the noteworthy architecture, the Northwest modern design that John Storrs employed here, and the fact that everything is so nature-facing, and the meeting rooms, 90% of the meeting rooms have natural daylight. You don't find that in a normal hotel. You certainly don't find meeting rooms that look like this in your average destination hotel. So I think our locality and the innate qualities of our locality and the assets that we have on this location are in fact world-class. And I think this is a world-class community. So I think that we all work together. You talked about security. I think that was your third question. I'll hit that one next. No question about it. You know, we were here earlier this year, and Bill actually got his computer stolen while he was here on property, which is amazing. You would never expect something like that to happen. It turned out it was an individual that had a relationship with the prior management. They had a gift certificate, and they were able to sneak in here, and it was kind of a scam that they were running. We were able to identify that individual and have that person dealt with to the authorities. But no question about it, normally a high-end resort like this would have some form of a gate or a guard at front. We're still working through kind of what that looks like. Obviously the neighborhoods are all gated and relatively secure, but adding cameras, adding gates, and certainly beefing up security, which we will do. Certainly that'll be a product of having the resort have occupancy levels higher than 44%. We'll have all those resources here. So security is a big focus. We recognize the risks of, as I said before, you know, if one guest is robbed or you know, bothered in some way by through an illegal act, the risks are asymmetric. So we recognize the importance of that. On the internet question, I think you're referring to how we would interact with the local community. As I said before, Steve and I hatched up the idea of having 5 or 6 people come over and we'll have a fireside chat, whoever's interested in listening to us. I see that we've got the free beer works, Steve. Good.
Yeah, always.
But certainly we've got connections now with the community presidents from all 3 of the neighborhoods here. Steve's been a phenomenal liaison with us, and so you know we haven't looked as far as setting up a community website or anything like that, but we can do all that. So we're open to suggestions. Happy to do that. And what was your 4th question?
What's in it for you?
What are you getting out of this?
Oh, what am I getting?
Free beer.
A long time ago. Thank you for asking it. A long time ago, it's actually a great question. So a long time ago, I've been very fortunate in my career. I've kind of been at the right place at the right time in many instances. I spent the first 20 plus years of my career working in public companies. And cool thing about being in a big public company is you've got a big team, you've got access to tons of resources, great legal talent, great investment banking talent. You do big deals, and you get to learn from all those big deals. When we formed Alpha Wave Investors 3 years ago, one of our core values as a company is we all want to focus. We have 3 founding partners. We all want to focus on deals that are with asset classes, subject matter, strategies, and in locations that we're passionate about. And so certainly Salishan fit within that bill. We don't work on deals that aren't things that we're passionate about. So for me, taking Salishan from where it had been, from where it is today, to where we know it can get to, and it's not going to be easy, but we've done it in a number of instances with many different properties, whether they're urban or resorts or somewhere in between. When you do it right, and when you see the product of that vision coming to fruition, there's nothing more gratifying. So that's part of who I am and what we do. So it's a big piece of this is the satisfaction that we all get when you execute well on a real estate investment. Certainly we get paid as a part of it. I'm a big investor in this deal. We have outside investors as well. But in my view is if you're working for money, you're probably working for the wrong things in life. We all need money to put a roof over our head and food on the table, but ultimately you can never be great at anything you do if money is the primary motivation, and that's not my motivation here.
Do you plan to flip it?
Our business is, we never have a stated duration for our investments. So we've had deals that have been sold within a 1 or 2 year time frame. We've got many more like this one where I would hope that we would hold it for a very, very long time. Ultimately, the way our model works, I'm a managing member of this deal, but we do have outside investors. and we have to act as a fiduciary for those investors. So, you know, if somebody came in and said, hey, we're gonna give you a fair price for the resort, and if you add up to some of the parts here, I mean, this place is worth so much more than what we paid for it. We'd have to entertain that, but we wouldn't act, today I don't think there's any number that we would act on. I shouldn't say it that way, but it's highly unlikely that somebody would show up with a number that we would act on because we know how much innate value is yet to be realized here. And as I said, the fun of investing in real estate is coming up with a plan, executing on the plan, and then seeing that, seeing the fruits of those efforts. So, not planning to flip. Did you have a question?
I did. So you brought up demographic a couple of times in your presentation. So I think that the demographic is fairly obvious, as it stands here. So I've had the good fortune of being at the right place, right time, much like you in my career. So I'm a young guy, I'm retired, and I have friends that would love to come to Salishan, but they have kind of a preconceived notion about what it's about.
Yeah.
So how are you going to present to maybe a younger set
Yeah.
to draw people in?
So I'm glad you asked that question because when we developed this whole thing, I kept going back saying we have them young, vibrant, good-looking folks. Not that that's a direct prerequisite at all, but we want to show this place as a location where people of all different walks of life, from all different parts of the world, are going to come if they're focused on wellness, if they appreciate great service, if they enjoy social culinary experiences, and if they want to have some fun with some different recreation opportunities that we offer here. So, yeah, my view is that we would love to open this up to a very broad demographic, and I hope certainly wasn't the intent. I hope it wasn't taken as my comment, but that was a particular walk of society that we're talking about. I'm talking more about people who love wellness, who again appreciate service, who want to have some great social interactions around food and beverage. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
You talked about your strategies for attracting travelers and customers.
Yes.
What are your strategies specifically to attract us back to the resort?
Yes.
Notably, involved including tennis, check on club restaurants or shops.
Yeah.
And one of the strategies in that area is to keep back to the street.
You bet. The question was, what are our strategies to attract you all, the neighbors of the owners within the Salishan community back into the resort, which is the whole punchline of my presentation. So you're way ahead of me. I must be mired in one particular slide. But you guys asked a question about the marketplace, for example. We're actively pursuing a plan to fill that place up. We know this is kind of a situation where the resort has suffered from a vicious cycle. It's been, for lack of a better description, circling the toilet bowl for many years. And we're going to shift, we're going to reverse that whole process. So when we start doing more and more here within the resort to attract customers, that'll also drive more business into the marketplace. That'll make the marketplace more attractive to tenants. And we'll get the right groups in there. Right now, we're in the process of signing a lease with a brew pub group, a music-based brew pub called Beachcrest Brewing. They're great folks. They play jazz music and good modern music, but they also have a brewery-based social environment. They'll be over on that little deck area that overlooks the stream there in between the marketplace and the fairway. We're looking to bring coffee in there. We're looking to bring art studios back. We know we had a great art program there. We're also looking to bring a high-end recreation outfitter so that Salishan can serve as a hub for recreation opportunities throughout the Oregon coast as well as inland. So that's again the mountain biking, that's the kayaking, the fat tire bikes that'll go on the beach, and so on and so forth. And we think once we get a couple of these guys in there, there's a whole lot of folks that are waiting to see what happens here, and rightfully so, before they're willing to jump into the marketplace. But that marketplace is such a great gem. The location right there on the 101. I'm positive once we get the message out, we'll have no trouble bringing in a great client base, which will unquestionably serve the local community. Another thing that we're not ready to roll out tonight, but we will be rolling out, is a Salishan homeowners and I guess some of you guys call yourselves leaseholders, program for you all that kind of, again, honors the relationship that the resort has traditionally had with you all. It gives you special privileges here. It gives you that is what will be rolled out here later on this spring. We're just working through the details, and we would like to get your feedback on what you would most highly value with a program like that. But yes.
So I'm just curious, if you look at the retail portion down at the marketplace, if you would look at that more as an amenity than trying to make it a revenue stream. I mean, yes, you have to make money, but to keep the rents where somebody can afford to stay there, service as an amenity to the community. And then also, I like the idea, because Lawrence Gower's gone now, and I like the idea of having some art down there. Has anybody ever reached out to Sitka? You can have rotating artists that are already there and they're in place.
So Sarah is, I don't think Sarah Holm is not here with us tonight, I don't think. But so Sarah is our resident art expert. So as you know, there are, I think, somewhere around 38 Leroy stencils here on the property, but there are any number of other high-end, well-known Pacific Northwest artists that are here. So one of the things that we were also planning to announce at the end tonight is we're bringing back from the early phase of Salishan's existence. There's a room next to where we just were before this session called the Gallery Room up by the attic. They used to do every Thursday night or the third Thursday of every month. They would do an art walk. We do this down where we are in Laguna Beach. It's great. You have some free wine, some cheese, some fun activities for folks. But then we have a local artist who can come through and present his or her artwork. Great social experience, great way for everybody to come back and reconvene, and very much of a community-focused initiative. So that's something we would do in the resort. I've also talked to Sarah already about coming out. We have a fairly ambitious capital program for the resort this year. It's about $5 million that we'll be investing into the resort, and I'll explain where. But I've asked Sarah to take a portion of that and bring in some new modern artists that can also complement the amazing art program that we have here. So art is a big piece of the puzzle, and certainly a huge component of the history here.
Right here.
Quickly.
Ken, right here.
Okay, yes.
You talked about wellness, and I don't know if this has been entertained, but Trader Joe's is certainly a hub or a marketplace.
Yes.
And it attracts all kinds of people. If you're talking about wellness, it's certainly something that this community and the local residents can certainly take advantage of as far as being able to spend a little marketplace. Everyday stuff.
Trader, so when we were, so as I mentioned, this was a real estate owned auction, a kind of a bankruptcy deal. So the information flow was relatively limited, but that was one of the concepts that surfaced early on in our underwriting, that potentially Trader Joe's would be interested in coming in here. We continue to chase that opportunity down. Absolutely agree. That would be a wonderful add to that. Yes.
We're having a wedding reception for our niece in this very room in the fall, and we're bringing up to 100 people from around the world, and certainly outside of Oregon, to the venue here. And we really hope that they're going to be very enthused about coming back again. But some policies may inhibit that kind of desire. One of which is the cost of the housing in this town.
Yeah.
But then there's no guarantee of the room. How would any of our guests want to come to a resort that wasn't going to give them a guarantee of their room, especially for an event of that kind? So I guess it's just an example of policy review that in areas of housing and
absolutely. I'm not familiar with that policy. That should not be a policy. If you're planning to travel across the country for a wedding, you need to know you're going to have a room. If that is in fact a policy, it's no longer a policy as of right now. I promise you that won't be the case. So we'll if you want to share your information with Bill, we can make sure that that's, or with Herbert here.
Yeah, I'll be happy to talk
Yeah.
to you, and I'm familiar with it.
Okay, last point here, and then we're gonna actually go into Q&A. Eco Adventure is the last point, and if you guys have probably all read the book Loose Sand Hills about this place, and the book is just replete with concepts that relate to the 1965 version of Eco Adventure, and the fact that this is such a picturesque, special piece of real estate. And so again, our plan here is to introduce more outdoor-facing recreation opportunities. Many of those will actually take place off of our footprint, but they'll originate here. We want to be a place where we'll facilitate all kinds of outdoor activities. We know that's a growing and important base within the Oregon market. And so we're gonna take what is today, again, kind of a two-pronged recreation strategy and make it into 100 different things that people can do, all the way up from. We are introducing glamping here to the resort. That's probably a concept that's foreign to many of you. The idea, and this is sort of crazy. Many of the highest rated resorts in the world offer this concept of glamping. So in today's day and age, people work in glass and steel skyscrapers in the middle of Portland or Seattle or San Francisco, wherever you are. Very busy, very active. They'd love to be the guy who hikes to the top of the mountain with the freeze-dried food and sleeps in a tiny little tent. But these people don't have that kind of disposable time. They do have the income. So people are coming to these glamping areas, and we've got a spot here that's completely isolated from all the other activities where we're going to add this. We create an experience where you're camping, but you're proximate to the resort, so you can come in, you can enjoy the resort's amenities. It's a very luxury experience. We're going through the permitting process now, but the plan is to have full luxury bathrooms that are part of these cool tents that we're doing. They're on platforms. There's all kinds of cool amenities that the guests will have access to who are in the glamp grounds. We're likely to do 10 of these tents, and as I mentioned, some of the highest rated resorts on the planet have this concept. There's a place that we looked at earlier this year in Vancouver Island called Clayoquot that has 25 units. It's only 25 tents, and their average daily rate is somewhere around $4,400. People pay to stay in these tents. So yeah, exactly. That's what I said. They said, why buy that place? We can do it here, and it costs us nothing. So we're adding things like that are enhancing the overall enjoyment of the outdoor beaches that we have. Yeah.
Those glamping sites that you just mentioned, are they on golf courses?
No, it's not on the golf. It's in we've got a lot of wooded area that's in between. There's an area here that used to be a climbing wall and some other things that has a lot of wooded area that's completely sheltered from the golf and independent. So we'll be able to do that. Another thing that we're doing, how many people here have actually walked on the nature trail in the last year? Oh, you guys are braver than I thought. That nature trail with the bridges and everything. I'm talking about the one over across on the west side, the one here in the forest. The bridges are falling in and everything. And last year when they repaired the road to the island, they put a huge culvert that's sticking out and so on. Now, if you have your eyes closed when you walk down there, it sounds awesome. There's this beautiful waterfall and everything. Well, we've got a group called Lifescapes International who we've worked with many times before. They actually do high-end resorts in Macau and Las Vegas and places like that. We used them at the big Hilton in San Diego and so on. But their real passion is for nature-facing resorts like this. And when they found out that we were involved in Salishan, they got so excited about it. They've been developing a master plan for the overall landscaping here that is very much a reversion back to what would be native and natural here, but done in a way that really enhances the guest experience. A lot of focus in that nature trail area. We're planning to add what's called a canopy walk there. So there will be like bridges that they go from tree to tree, still very shielded from the island condos, but it'll really create a great deal of enjoyment in that area. We'll fix the nature trail. And we're also planning to add a large, and you might remember this for this fall, a large pavilion out there. So when you walk into the valley there, and you're suddenly in this rainforest, we can add a large pavilion there that people can do yoga on, they can do weddings there, we can do receptions out there. Incredibly unique and very special thing. And then one of the pieces that we'll do through Lifescapes is take that big silver culvert that has a beautiful sound to it that looks like an industrial effluent of some sort. We're going to make that look kind of like a log flume, and so it'll be much more consistent with the natural setting. We're doing a lot of that in conjunction also with the Audubon Society, who many of you guys know Audubon had a good relationship here with the resort for many years. We reached out to them shortly after we bought the place, and they were ecstatic to know that we're in it, and we'd like to rekindle that relationship. So we're going to do more with the Audubon Society as well to really emphasize the natural beauty of our location. Yes?
What is your landscape relationship with the hills? I mean, we're bordering each other, we use each other's roads, and we have tree issues of overseas. Have you thought about that?
Well, we have a great landscape team here, headed by a guy named Bill Barnes. He runs all the golf course, but his team takes care of all the landscaping here on site. Right now, we don't have a reciprocal deal with the hills or the spit, but we can certainly talk if you don't feel like you're getting adequate landscaping service up there. I can assure you our team has some pretty professional infrastructure here. They've got all kinds of tractors and folks, and frankly, especially in the lower season for golf, we might be able to allocate some resources up your direction to help with your landscaping. Yes?
I see a lot of kayaks, fat wheel kites.
Yeah.
Trails, so are these much busy, right?
Well, there's nobody on the beach right now. That would be a great problem. I don't expect that you're going to see a noticeable increase in beach.
Well, I'm also concerned about the wildlife.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, Siletz Bay, for example, that's an area where we've shown a kayak here. The reality is Siletz Bay is not a place where a novice, a tourist wants to go out there and get out on a kayak and try to deal with those currents and the tides and everything else. So that's meant to be representative of the fact that we'll have a relationship with a professional outfitter who will likely take people up the Siletz River, for example, or some of the other natural areas. We're also certainly planning to incorporate eco tours out of Depot Bay, for example, and out into the Pacific. So yes, the beach out here is beautiful, and I go out there in the mornings and it's gorgeous. You can probably expect a few more people to utilize that beautiful resource, but we'll talk. But if it's noticeable, we'll figure something out. But at this point,
Are you going to be adding any more accesses that
No.
right now are not world safe?
There's no plan. If it needs to be, if the access, the question is about, are we adding more access to the beach? If there's a need to do any improvements there, we'll certainly look at that. We're happy to take care of that. It is a little bit adventurous to climb down through those rocks, but our plan is not to add any access points because the design is anybody who's at the resort goes through the nature trail straight out to the beach, and we kind of don't want people filtering into the Salishan neighborhood itself. Yes?
I noticed the first thing you pull in the parking lot, you see a lot of shapes off the road. A lot of this wood's not available anymore.
Yeah.
What is your plan to restore?
So we have, that's one of the biggest budget items we've got. Now, our plan is to actually spread over roofs over several years. We've got $1.7 million allocated to roof replacements here. We're looking at a few different choices on the shingles. We want to be respectful and honor the construction that was used in the initial design, which is cedar shingle. Cedar shingles, as all of you know, last about 10 years in this environment. So not the most practical material to use on a roof here. So we're looking at a few different choices. No matter what we put up there, it's going to be virtually indistinguishable from a normal cedar shingle. We just need to figure out what the right product to use there is. And the reality is a lot of the shingles that have come off are on carports and some of those areas. We've gone down and kind of done a survey. We're going to address the worst ones this year, and we'll just every year do kind of 20% of the roofs. Yeah?
All these beautiful sunny pictures are nice, but we have 6 months of rainy winter here, and I think...
I've never seen it rain here. I've been here so many times, and every time I'm here it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
One of our greatest assets is our indoor tennis center. And I would really like to hear from you that the needed repairs will be done, and the tennis program will be promoted.
Sure, and Lee's
And
back
maybe
there.
even our wonderful tennis pro will get a raise.
Yeah.
Good job, man. I never thought about salt in the pond. All
right. He's such a team player with the broader concept of the resort. I know he's been up in University of Washington and recruiting folks to come out here and help us on the recreation front and so on. Yes, I've heard multiple times we need to resurface the courts, and we have several leaks in the roof system there. That's in our focus, and we will address it. And yeah, totally agree with you. He's a great guy. So thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you for coming out. I think
yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think everybody.
We want to hear this. You can see Bill's gone through several pencils now. And, we want to hear all this. Believe me, your comments are well taken, and we want to build. We're going to build all this into our plans. As I said, we can't do necessarily everything, but we're not done. So we'll keep going. But I want to say the thanks goes to this crowd, not to me.
I still do have a question.
Yes.
But thank you for coming out and doing all this. It's awesome. I think we've all been with anxiety.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Can't wait to see how it all comes together. On behalf of all of us that play ball, to dissuade the nasty rumors of the course getting minimized from a 4 to a 9-hole course.
Yeah.
Could you address that for us?
My pleasure. Yeah, like I said, we're focusing on making 18 holes of golf successful this year. This is a test case for us, so I want to be clear on that one. You know, over the last several years, golf has declined. We think that's because we haven't marketed it properly. We maybe didn't have the right pro in place. There's a whole lot of reasons why golf has gone down. We've had professionals look at it. We do about 7,000 rounds of golf a year, which is inadequate to support any facility. It should be about double that. So we're very focused on that, and what I love about real estate, as I said, it's a tangible asset. You can get your hands on it, and you can come up with solutions that are win-wins and create multi-uses for different aspects of the real estate, where, like I say, we yield out every square foot of a building. We want to do something like that with golf, where golf is emphasized. The 18 holes is fully operational, and around the fringe in a careful way. We've got people who are able to ride their mountain bikes, and maybe there's off hours or what have you, where people can walk around the perimeter of the courses or whatever. We'll work through all that, but as we sit here today, focusing on succeeding at 18 holes of golf is a key piece of our plan.
I think Mike Kaiser knows how to
get
a really good golfer.
Oh yeah, they're okay. And look, and if they didn't think we could succeed, this is the Kemper guys. If they didn't think we could succeed, they wouldn't have been. They proactively sought us out, and they're pitching to do the business. So they wouldn't be here if they didn't think we could succeed.
Plans for swimming pool?
Beg your pardon?
Swimming pool?
Yeah, we do have some capital that'll go in the swimming pool. We're adding plants and chairs, and you know, you probably remember this years ago, the swimming pool where that silly video game room is. There used to be a little sun deck out there, and it used to be kind of a great interaction once again with the outdoors. We might not be able to remove that building. We're certainly going to make that building into something other than a video game room. And we're also working on a plan, which I think we'll be able to do, where we're going to create a really cool outdoor hot tub outside of where the pool is, in a secluded, wooded area, easily accessed, and it's not going to just be a, round. It'll be something that's pretty memorable in and of itself. So we're going to enhance that experience a little bit through those kinds of things. Yes.
There are many of us that go down the pool and they go down there. The pool is beautiful and I think it's really clean and nice. But it would be really nice if we just maybe instead
So sanitation in the pool area, I've noticed that the saunas, for example, we need to replace all that wood in those saunas. We did recently replace one of the, probably both of the actual heaters in the saunas, but yeah, good. Sorry about that. But that's been replaced. We'll certainly add the maintenance to that area to our list. Yeah, yes.
So recently, and one of the previous owners took away the access from the leaseholders to be able to access the traffic light. They made that one way. But ever since the resort is community here, they allowed both two-way access so people could get from the leaseholder property to the light because the intersection of the highway.
Oh, into the parking lot, the access?
My knowledge, there's never been a golf hit there for the security.
Yeah.
Try it.
Okay, so two-way, I get what you're saying. Two-way access from the leaseholders through the parking lot to the lake. Okay. Oh, you need to be able to go north and not, don't you need to go south? Okay, yeah, let us look into that. Let me get to one last slide, and then we'll go to questions. All right, that's on the eco-adventure. It'll be pretty awesome. Social eating and drinking. So the last piece of the puzzle, which we already touched on. You know, we saw Sam Fire come and go in a fairly short order. A bit of an attempt to jump the shark, as they say, with that one. We're talking to a number of groups on the food and beverage side who are going to have an emphasis on a couple of different things. As I said before, a social environment. So, for example, Lifescapes has drafted up a plan to take that space that's just to the east of the sunroom, that's currently like a flagstone patio, and really activate that for those sunny days that we get 365 days a year. People will go out there, there'll be fire, there'll be trees, there'll be lighting, and it'll be a wonderful place on those nice days for people to sit out there and enjoy the outdoors and have a much more social environment for dining. We're trying to figure out logistically what's the best use of this, what was the Sam Fire. We had a lot of trouble operationally just keeping that place serviced, given that we had activity going on in the attic and we had stuff going on in the sunroom, we had stuff in Sam Fire. It's a very convoluted food and beverage operation, so we need to tighten up the operation. We're going to revamp menus so that they're appealing to a broad group of folks. And again, our focus is going to be much more on the social and personal connections, the community feel that you get when you're dining or drinking or just hanging out here. And that's something that's been lost. You know, Bill's heard me describe this multiple times. We go in the lobby or the attic, and it's missing something. It's got that sterile feel to it. So in that regard, we've got a group called Elk Collective. It's run by a woman named Kelly Ogden. She's doing some work for us up in Central Oregon as well. Amazing design group. When they found out that they were going to be involved here in Salishan, same thing, she almost fell over. She's an Oregonian and really just loves the place. So to have Kelly now doing work on activating the lobby, activating the attic, and making this into a place that's going to be much more of a venue for people that people want to congregate. Instead of, like the lobby, you literally want to come in and transact with your room key and just walk out because it's just cold. So anyway, we're going to create these social spaces that'll ultimately get more people hanging out. You know, the more people, when you're around people, more people come. It's a weird concept, but you all get that, right? If you're the only couple in a restaurant, you wonder what's wrong with the food or the service or whatever. So we're gonna change all that with our social dining, and that we do believe is a big piece of our puzzle. Okay, spa, we just touched on. We're going to emphasize that we've got a great spa director. We just sent her down to Northern California to spend some time in some spas there to come back with some ideas. I met with her today. If you guys all haven't met Sadie, you should. She's a true asset here in the resort. And she's so energized by the fact that we're going to not only emphasize the spa experience, but we're also going to add wellness concepts throughout the resort. Camping, I mentioned, we'll have this coastal camp, which is I think going to be, while it's only going to be about 5% of our rooms inventory, it's going to be one of these things that create a lot of chatter. We actually have that truck that'll be shipped out here soon with a little Salishan logo on the side that'll transport people there through the back roads and stuff. So it should be a really fun, even if it's somewhat contrived, it'll be a really fun experience. Yeah, that truck's from 1967, so kind of the same vintage as the resort itself. So, yes, we have the chicken wire glass. And then I touched on it earlier, I won't spend any more time on this one, but we plan for the resort to be a base for offsite activities, not just on the recreation front, but the fact that our view is we haven't packaged the resort properly when it comes to selling to groups or leisure travelers. You can use this as a base camp to get out to wine country very easily, Cape Perpetua. We think that we're gonna ultimately be a place where people will come directly to Salishan and then go to Cannon Beach to have dinner and then come back here instead of vice versa, because Cannon Beach has gotten so crowded and kind of overbought at this point. So we actually think the pendulum's going to swing back towards Salishan, and places like Cannon Beach will be a day trip rather than a destination in and of themselves. And that's our presentation. So now we're going to go to Q&A. Yeah. Okay, timeline. So we've actually got a phased approach to it. I mentioned we've got a $5 million capital program for this year. The timeline is to deliver the bulk of the things that I talked about today for this next season. And that's probably a July 1 if we want to be realistic. I think we can get it done more quickly. We're going to meet with the county next week with a comprehensive plan, which entails employee housing, glamping, the outdoor adventure activities that we talked about, and some of the landscaping things. But a lot of what we talked about that are going to really make the differences are fairly easy, actually. They don't require a ton of capital. It's more service-oriented, it's different programs, and it's changing menus and things like that. So our plan is to get all that activated by this summer. Yay. Yes?
My favorite memories from 20 years ago was to be able to walk in here and have an employee recognize me and I recognize that they were local.
Yeah.
So did I miss something in there where is it more affordable to bring employees in and offer housing or not, rather than looking to the city and so?
Oh no, our first starting point, the question was about where would we like to get, where would we seek to get people to work here? Absolutely, we want people who are locals first and foremost. That's why we're looking to implement daycare and some other fringe benefits that aren't currently available today, and certainly increase the pay rate. So we can take a lot of the locals that have gone to other places in the market because they couldn't afford to work here and bring them back. So priority number one is to bring locals into the hotel. Supplement that with folks from out of state doing mostly jobs that, to be honest, a lot of the locals aren't interested in doing, whether that's housekeeping or some of the other more, line level positions. But the locals who could be at the front desk and in the service side, or certainly in the supervisory front, we would love to have more of them.
Parking issues.
Yes?
Parking issues. I mean, you get a lot of people here and there's no place to park.
Yeah, well, one of the issues here is that, I don't know when this happened, but bell service and valet service went away at some point, and probably because they cost money, but it's such a fundamental piece of guest service. I think we're bringing that back, and I think with valet in particular, that will address parking. We actually have 538 spots here on property, so we're over-parked for a 205-room resort. But I agree with you. The spread out nature of the resort renders some of those parking spots less useful than others. So parking out front does become an issue, but I think we'll address that through dollars. Right, because it doesn't rain here, so you yes.
There's whispers that if you had a 415 building, the fence here would include golf. It would be at the cost of the membership, where we'd be, we'd have to maybe play back nine instead of 15.
last year that actually golfed. And traditionally, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they did a heck of a lot. We've actually included the director of sales and marketing, Mary Armstead, who was here back in the 80s. And she talked about how many golf events they did here. So there's a way for groups and members to exist symbiotically. I think that's a common concept in most golf clubs. So we want to be very respectful of the members, and I guess my point is, let's work through that when that problem arises, because today we don't have groups that are doing golf at all. We're going to hopefully change that. Okay, we'll do, can we do 3 more questions, and then I know everybody's getting home to actually back up to the attic to have some more.
Transportation, yes, have very limited access to rental, and even to ground transportation to the airport.
Yeah.
And that might facilitate more.
Yeah, so getting from the airport or getting from businesses in Portland or homes in Portland, we spent a fair amount of time on that. You know, we're working through concepts where your vacation starts when you leave your door of your home or your business, or you get off the plane with TX. You know, that can be done through a service. It can also be done through, as I touched on before, it's super easy to fly from KDX here to the Little Bay Airfield. You can do it on a King Air or other smaller craft. And a lot of the folks who wouldn't be coming here, if they knew that was an option, would be happy to pay a couple $100 to do it. So there's a bunch of ways that we can shorten the distance and eliminate that perceived barrier to coming here. We just haven't, the resort just hasn't done it in the past. Yes.
Yeah, it was a little weird on a Wednesday night.
Yes.
But you could still ask that question.
Like 10 o'clock.
No, he didn't say 3 more.
Yeah.
Owes us good golf and.
We'll see what happens.
And you gotta remember, it's a business.
Yeah.
You can't provide it if you're not successful.
You stop cutting trees.
Yeah.
The trail is awful.
We'd like to report new owner that's come here to tell us how great they are.
Yeah.
The last 8 years.
Yeah.
So good for you.
It's always the fourth owner that makes the money.
But let me turn it around. We're here to manage what you're going to do for us. Tell us what you feel and how you react to what you're not what we owe you or how you expect us to perform, but what do you like to see continue with companies?
Absolutely, it's very simple. That's actually the crux of our business plan. We just need all of you guys to rent one room, have one meal, and play one round of golf every single day of the year. Business plan is completely done. No, honestly, I think it's incumbent on us to create an environment where you all want to be, where you feel like you're part of the family, where people recognize you when you come into the resort, where they know your name, and where you do have special privileges. We are doing that, and what we're expecting and hoping in return is that you all will come back to the resort, spend more time, spend more of your money, and when you have guests in town, you encourage them to stay here. And when you're up in Portland or other markets, you talk about what a neat place this is, and we think that that'll happen ultimately when we deliver on what we talked about today, and that's our expectation. Thank you. We're available for questions afterward if there's anybody.